Alcohol Focus Scotland, the work that we do is very varied actually. We work with individuals from support services, we work with early years practitioners, primary school teachers, we work with employers, so our training takes us into all sorts of different areas, which keeps it really interesting and very varied. I think it's really crucial that people understand much more about alcohol than what they actually do. It becomes really clear during training. People might think that they know a fair bit about alcohol, but there's actually really sort of basic fundamental things that's still a bit of a mystery to people around alcohol. For example, things like people don't understand that alcohol is a psychoactive drug. That becomes really clear during training. And just to understand the very basic nature of the way alcohol can impact on people's health, as well as all the other areas of people's lives that it can impact on. But that very basic understanding about the health implications is really important for people to understand. So units of alcohol is really one that people don't talk about. Units, when they talk about if they've been out drinking, they'll talk about the number of drinks that they've had, and that's fair enough. Who goes about saying I had 4 units last night or 14 units last night? So understanding about the different strengths of drinks and the sizes of drinks is so important if you're trying to remain within the low risk guidelines around alcohol of 14 units. So for people to understand what that means in terms of the number of drinks they can have is really crucial. So the alcohol awareness course itself, we look at, it's quite a basic one, or we think it's quite a basic one, but people always come away from it saying that they've learned so much. But we will just really strip it back to things like we'll take people on a fictitious night out, we'll give them this scenario of going out for a meal and maybe going to listen to a band playing, and then we'll tot up just how many units that is that they've consumed over that night out, and then what's the impact of that for them the next day, for example, in terms of if they're going to have to drive to work, if they're maybe going to be having to operate machinery, that type of thing. It's really crucial for people to understand how long it takes alcohol for their body to process alcohol. People don't often understand the amount of time, and they're usually surprised by the amount of time that it takes their body to process alcohol. And what we do is we also dispel all these myths that people might have around ways to sober yourself up. So we'll explore that with people in quite a lot of detail as well, and people are usually surprised by that. So believe it or not, people still think that things like drinking some coffee, having a shower, eating some food are all going to help to sober them up. But of course, there's nothing that you can do to speed up the process in which your body actually processes alcohol. So we look at that, and we do it in a slightly fun way as well. It's not, people usually go away from our training saying that they've really enjoyed the interactive elements of it. They've had some fun, as well as learning lots from the sessions as well. We welcome all sorts of people onto the courses, and I have to say the alcohol awareness course, we reach so many different types of people. There's no one person that I would say that's a sort of stereotypical person that attends our training. It is very varied in the roles that they come from. They might be care home workers, they might be, we've had oral health nurses coming, so when they're speaking to people about their oral health care, they'll also be talking to them about their alcohol consumption as well, which is really crucial. But we get all sorts of people, and that's probably what makes the courses so interesting, is the variety of backgrounds that people come from. I would say almost everyone should come along on our courses and learn about it. Members of the public can book on it as well. Anybody who, the thing is, not everyone drinks, and that's absolutely fine, but I would say everyone in Scotland does have an opinion on alcohol, and to a certain extent most people will either see or be affected by some of the fallout from alcohol related harm that we have in Scotland. In our training sessions we use things like quizzes, we will use small group discussions, we will have big discussions, and we will use little scenarios for people to imagine what might be happening or going on with that particular scenario. But we're not just sitting lecturing to people, we do have different interactive elements to the sessions to try and keep it as interesting as possible. The feedback that we get from courses is very much people saying things like thought-provoking, really interesting, that was much more fun than I thought it might be. So the feedback's always really positive for our sessions. One of the activities that we do is that we will get people to imagine they're having friends round to their house for a drink, and we'll ask them to pour that friend a glass of wine or a spirit, whether it's gin, vodka, whiskey, whatever it is that they might be pouring for their friend. And people are always really surprised when we then pour it into a unit measuring cup, just how strong or how many units are in that actual drink. When people are drinking in pubs or restaurants or nightclubs, the actual measurements of the drink that they're poured is regulated, so it's always a certain size. But once we're drinking at home, when we home pour, we are much more generous with our drinks. And of course, when we drink at home now, we're not using necessarily the standard glasses that are used in pubs and nightclubs, but we have our own goldfish bowl sizes of glasses that we often use, particularly for wine. But one of the things that often happens with people home pouring is they might think roughly that's the size that they would get in a pub, and they'll pour it in, but it could be like 2 or 3 units as opposed to the 1 unit that you would be served in a bar. And then as the night progresses, people think that they can't taste the alcohol anymore, or that they're not poured in as much as they thought, so they start pouring in even more. So it's very, very hard for people to try and understand how much they're actually drinking, and there's no way of keeping track of those kind of home poured measures unless you're using a little measuring cup or a little lid. So we provide resources in our training. People take away things like a unit calculator, which helps them very quickly see how many drinks, how many units are in particular drinks. Some of them will also say how many calories. We also give them a unit measuring cup, which can be used to pour wine or spirits. People go away from our alcohol awareness course with a much better understanding of the harm that alcohol actually causes in Scotland. So as well as things like understanding the rates of deaths in Scotland every week that we have, we will also understand the huge impact it's placed on our NHS, on other emergency services, on social care, etc. They will also go away understanding much more about what's the effect on individuals and some of the reasons why people might be using alcohol, usually as a coping strategy, but they will also understand about the impact that will have on families, people who are close to the person who's drinking, but also children who might be living in that family. So they go away with a much wider and broader understanding of all aspects of alcohol, really. Alcohol Awareness Week is a perfect opportunity if you think about if we're trying to reach members of the public, if you think about the number of people who are in work, for example. Workplaces are ideal during Alcohol Awareness Week to hold an awareness session for their staff. It's a perfect idea to be running this as part of a wellness campaign. Your staff are much more likely to be more productive if they're not feeling the effects of alcohol when they're coming into work from, say, drinking the night before or the day before. but also just for them generally. It really helps them to understand whether or not their drinking is having an impact on them or causing an effect in their family, etc. And it opens up the door for people to be able to recognise and maybe say and reach out and get some help, because there's support out there for people. So one of the things that we know that really helps is when we talk about alcohol and break down some of the stigma that's around it. It's really crucial for getting people into support services to help them to recover from their alcohol problem, and we know that people getting access to treatment and services helps to save lives ultimately. So the more that we can talk about alcohol, I think the more that it helps to break down all these barriers around stigma and stereotypes of what it means to have an alcohol problem. So Alcohol Awareness Week is perfect timing and perfect idea for workplaces to get that information out to their staff.